Between now and the end of April, when we get to the 2015 NFL draft, about once a week or so, I want to do NFL draft related Q&A sessions. So if you've never participated in Q&A sessions, all you have to do is go to @pfspot_Schlegel on Twitter. I'll put the link down below, and then tweet your questions. I'll probably do those Q&As about the NFL draft every Friday. So if you have questions about teams and prospects, who could be trading, anything pertaining to the 2015 NFL draft in any way, shape, or form, make sure you take part in these Q&As. I'd love to get your questions. So got a few questions for this Q&A. I don't know how long it's going to be, but we'll see. Maybe that means I can go a little more in depth about some of the questions that were asked. So let's see here. Htown_TS asked, which draft experts do you take into account to a degree it's still your evaluations of what they say? I've got to be honest. In previous years, I've allowed myself to, in certain cases, be persuaded away out of something that I see or something that I felt, and that hasn't always done me the best when I've allowed that to happen. As years go along, I will continue to try and break away from listening to what anybody else says and just solely focusing on my own evaluations, because I feel like that when I do that, that's when I'm the most successful and the most accurate. Like, I will look at the 2014 draft as a perfect example. I didn't buy into the Jadeveon Clowney bullshit. Not saying he still won't be a really good NFL player, but there were so many people that were talking about Aaron Donald as, let's say, a second or third round pick. And you remember I was talking about him being a top 10 talent, and I actually ended up rating him above Jadeveon Clowney on my final big board. I had Clowney rated way too high because I allowed too many other people's perspectives and bullshit to seep into my own thinking and cloud my own judgment based off of what I was observing and seeing. But I didn't allow that to happen with Aaron Donald. I stuck to my guns. I stuck to my guns with Khalil Mack. I stuck to my guns to a degree with Odell Beckham. But where I really wanted to rate him as the best wide receiver in the 2014 NFL draft, I ended up rating him number 3rd, but still a top 10 prospect in that draft, right behind Sammy Watkins and Mike Evans, even though to me, for my money, based off of what I had really truly seen, I thought it was Beckham 1, Evans 2, Watkins 3. But I allowed some of those outside perspectives and opinions to kind of cloud my judgment. And you're going to see a lot less of that this year. It'll be more of me sticking to my guns across the board. And that's important, because when I stick to my guns and I go strictly off of what I believe and what I see, I think I'm far more successful and far more accurate than when I allow other perspectives to kind of creep into my thought process. Let's see here. NFL_draft guy, my guy here. Am I crazy for debating on ranking Devante Parker as my number 1 wide receiver? I think he's great in the open field. No, I don't think you are. I don't know that he's my number 1 wide receiver at this point in time, but I could definitely make an argument for him being it. For my money at this moment, Kevin White's my number 1, Devante Parker's my number 2, and Amari Cooper's my number 3. They're all top 15 talents at this point in time to me. But as I go back and watch more over the next 2+ months, 2.5 months, that could change a little bit, but it's not going to change a ton, I don't believe. I think it will stay Kevin White 1, Devante Parker 2, Amari Cooper 3. I don't think you're nuts for thinking that, though. I don't think Amari Cooper is the hands-down best wide receiver prospect in this draft. I still think he's a top 10, top 15 talent, but I don't think he's the number 1 player at his position. Then NFL_draft guy also wants to know, if the Bears can't get Mariota or Winston, should they go after someone else at quarterback? Because I'm not excited about anybody else. I agree with you. This quarterback class is very lame-ass. And as I've been going through and preparing to start doing scouting report videos on this channel, starting off next week with the quarterbacks, once I got past Winston and Mariota, man, I'm sitting there watching like, ooh, ooh. And I'm fighting that urge to overrate them because I'm a fan and because they're quarterbacks. I have to try and make sure that I evaluate them based solely off of what I see and how they project at the NFL level. And a lot of what I see ain't that good. That's the truth. It just ain't that good outside of Winston or Mariota. If you don't get one of those 2 guys in this draft, you're probably left hoping and wishing, frankly. So if the Bears can't get Mariota or Winston, they've just got to go with the best available player on the board, whether that would be a Devante Parker or an Amari Cooper or an offensive tackle or somebody on the defensive line or a linebacker, an edge rusher. Whoever the case might be, they've got to get the best available player. But I pray to God Winston's there and the Bears, or excuse me, Mariota's there, one of the two in the Bears' grasps, either at 7 or around number 7 where the Bears could move up and it wouldn't cost them a lot to do so because they badly need a quarterback in the worst possible way. A. Samuel, 9529, wants to know, unless Cooper falls, should the Vikings take Parker or White for a wide receiver? It seems each analyst has a different opinion on it. In terms of need, offensive line is the bigger need, but the value is there more so at pick 11 for the Vikings at wide receiver. Now, with that said, could the Vikings afford to move up to get a guy at wide receiver? Yes, because of all the first-round picks they've had in recent years. I also have uncertainty of whether or not Cordell Patterson's ever really going to pan out to what they may have envisioned. But I think they're fine with any of those three. I think the Vikings are in a great position at number 11, in my opinion, that if they choose to go on the offensive side, they will get a great wide receiver in either Cooper, White, or Parker. Any of those three. They don't have to move up and still get a really good one. They don't necessarily need to move down and take the risk that they might not get one of those three really good ones. But that's what I think it's going to happen. They could go offensive line. That's a definite possibility and a definite need, but I don't know if that's the best way for them to go. I really don't. Now, if they really love Amari Cooper and they want to move up 4 or 5 picks to get him, maybe they could, maybe they should, but maybe they shouldn't. Because does it really always pay off to move up? You look at last year, everybody was like, the Bills moved up to get Watkins. He's going to be hands down the best receiver in this class. You have to make that move. Did you really? You could have just stayed there and took Odell Beckham Jr. And everybody was praising the Browns. Well, they trade down, got a future first-round pick. But yeah, instead of taking Odell Beckham Jr., they took fucking Justin Gilbert because they're stupid. As I talked about after that draft. And look at how stupid they look now. They're the Browns. Let's see here. Draft Melvin Gordon. Also known as Bulls_Jaden. I don't know how you're a Bulls and a Lions fan. That's an interesting combination. Asked, who do you think will be the biggest bust in this year's draft? I haven't gotten to that point yet. I really haven't. Where I can sit there and say who I think is going to be the biggest bust. I've identified certain guys that I think are incredibly overrated, and I've talked about them a bit ad nauseum before on this channel in previous mock draft videos. Most certainly, I think Randy Gregory falls into that category. I most certainly think that Brandon Scherff falls into that category. For a while I was beating the drum about Cedric Ogbuehi being overrated, but now with him tearing an ACL, he's going to go more in the round 3 to 4 range, which frankly, based off of what I saw, is where he should have went on film any damn ways. Who's going to be the biggest bust in the draft? In some ways, I could look at a Randy Gregory because I think he's a guy that's not as explosive as people think, and he has trouble setting the edge. And he's a guy that I don't think can get off of a double team, which sometimes if you're an elite edge rusher, to have an impact on the game, you're going to have to be able to beat a double team. I think there's big-time bust potential there. I really, truly do. In terms of other guys that I think could be big-time busts, like I said, I haven't really identified them just yet. I will, and when I do, believe me, you'll know about it. Then he also wants to know, who do you think will be the biggest steal in the draft this year? Biggest steal. I'm going to look some at the wide receiver position. I'm going to see guys like Rashad Green from Florida State and Justin Hardy from East Carolina. Those are a couple of guys that stand out to me as having big-time steal potential written all over them. I look at a guy like Cedric Ogbuehi from Texas A&M, who has a top 10 pick I thought was criminally, offensively, and god-awfully overrated, but it's a guy as a 3rd or 4th round pick coming off of that knee injury could end up being a big, huge steal as a very athletic right tackle or a solid, if nothing else, left tackle at the NFL level. Other guys that I think that could be steals, you're going to have several of them coming from this running back class. I really, truly believe that. And there's going to be a running back taken in the 2nd round that will end up being better than the running backs taken in the 1st round ahead of him. So that running back class, a wide receiver class, that's a place you're going to want to look for some steals. In terms of tight end, maybe somebody like a Clive Walford from the U. In terms of defensive players, maybe a Haole Kikaha from Washington would be a guy that stands out to me as a guy that's going to go under the radar a bit, but he's going to be a guy that could potentially be a big-time steal for somebody. I haven't gotten to the point where I could sit there and tell you for sure my biggest bust or who's going to be the biggest steals. But that's just some of the names that I'm thinking at this point in time. But like I said, there's a lot of process to go. So just so you know, like I said, again, once a week, I plan on doing these NFL Draft Q&As here on this channel. I'll have another mock draft coming up next weekend after the Combine. I'll also let you know that starting next week, I believe, whether it be at the beginning, middle, or end of the week, I'm going to be starting to do scouting report videos for prospects at different positions in the 2015 NFL Draft. I'll be starting off with quarterbacks, as always is the case. I will do maybe 10 to 12 quarterback prospects. And then in terms of the different positions, I don't know how many I'll do for each position. You know, I could end up with 200 scouting report videos. I could end up with 50. I'm not really sure what all I'm going to do at this point. But I know I've already done all of my homework on Marcus Mariota and Jameis Winston. And I'm finishing up the rest of my homework on the rest of the quarterback class. So starting next week, just stay tuned for my scouting reports on all the quarterbacks in this 2015 NFL Draft. Thanks to you guys that took the time to submit your questions. Hopefully next week I'll get more response and more questions from you about the 2015 NFL Draft.